The Red Sox had an exciting 2025 season, but what exactly is 2026 going to look like? Hey everyone, and welcome to Boston Balling. I'm your host, Gabby Maljanian, also currently the host of the Locked On Red Sox podcast as well. You can find that show Monday through Friday on any podcast platform of me discussing the latest in all things Boston Red Sox. Now, on Boston Balling, as I have actively brought this show back over the last couple weeks, format is 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, generally talking about the Patriots, Bruins, Red Sox, Celtics, with a little mix of some other things in there. I'll be bringing in guests here and there along the way too. So should be a great reboot. But because I talk about the Red Sox every day already on Locked On Red Sox, the Red Sox Boston Balling episodes are interesting because it's only once a week. So on today's show, I really want to focus on kind of the outlook from the 2025 Boston Red Sox and going into 2026. So the Boston Red Sox going into 2025, I wasn't necessarily expecting them to have the season that they did. I knew that a lot of things would have had to go right in order for them to truly make a deep playoff run. Now, here's why. They had a good offseason going into 2025, acquiring starting pitcher Garrett Crochet and acquiring third baseman Alex Bregman, who they wanted to replace essentially Rafael Devers with that third base. So we all know how that went down. So they went into the season with Rafael Devers playing DH and Alex Bregman playing third. And it took a lot of convincing, I think, on Rafael Devers' part for him to move to being more of a full-time DH to make room for Bregman at third. But he eventually agreed and said, sure, I'll do that. And then first baseman Tristan Casas in early May went down with a season-ending injury. So then Rafael Devers ended up being asked, he was approached essentially by the front office to play first base and essentially learn that position because Tristan Casas was hurt. And obviously there was nothing they could really do about it. Devers didn't want to play first. So they ended up kind of platooning a couple guys at first base, Abraham Toro, who they called up from AAA, and then also Romy Gonzalez, who is already on the major league team. So Rafael Devers is a guy who very much relies on routine. And when he was asked to play first, that wasn't a position that he was used to playing defensively. And then the Red Sox front office eventually had enough and decided they were going to trade him. And everybody lost it. And the reason why is because not necessarily Devers himself, but more the idea of the Red Sox losing a power bat and having no desire financially to allocate that money elsewhere. Because of the way that the Red Sox front office has operated over the last few seasons, there is typically this assumption of, yeah, they're not going to reallocate that money. Like, why would they? They clearly traded him to get that money off the books, which, yes, I do think in the grand scheme of things, the deeper reason as to why they traded Devers primarily was because they didn't want that contract on the books anymore. And the fact that the San Francisco Giants were willing to take on the entirety of the rest of Devers' remaining salary is what sold the Red Sox primarily on agreeing to a little bit less of a return than you would think for a player of that caliber. Because when they traded Devers, you would think the Red Sox would have demanded more high caliber players than what they got. And that didn't exactly happen. And the most notable player they did get in that trade was Kyle Harrison, who, by the way, I am very excited about. I speak very highly of him. When he came over in that Rafael Devers trade, started the season with the Red Sox in June in AAA. And in the case of where the Red Sox are at now, I was like, yeah, you know, they definitely could use pitching talent. San Francisco spoke very highly of him. I spoke with him in Worcester, and he was really excited about being in a Boston Red Sox uniform. He basically expressed to me, I know what this represents. I know who I came over here for. I know that Rafael Devers was a big piece of this Boston Red Sox team. So I fully intend on proving myself to the Red Sox front office, everybody in the organization, the fan base, that I'm worthy of wearing this uniform, essentially. So I really liked the attitude that he brought, and he has a very strong routine when it comes to his pregame prep for games. And I'm really excited about where things could go with him. I like the idea of Harrison being potentially a starter in the Red Sox rotation at some point, whether it's in 2026 or further down the road. And I'm going to get to that even further in a little bit. But the thing that I like about Kyle Harrison is that he does have a pretty wide range of pitches that he has continued to develop over these last few seasons. And he's really determined to continue to develop that arsenal even more. So I'm excited to see the potential of what he can do. But the thing is, what happened with this Devers trade and the aftermath that came with it, the Red Sox kind of need him to pan out. Like, they need somebody to work out in that trade, and they think Kyle Harrison is their best bet, especially because the top prospect that they got in that trade is no longer with the Boston Red Sox because he was traded to the Dodgers for Dustin May at the trade deadline. So you can't really make this up. This is a scenario in which the Red Sox need somebody to pan out that they got in that Rafael Devers trade. They also got Jordan Hicks, who's a reliever, and the Red Sox were really high on Hicks when he was a free agent at the end of 2024 before he went to San Francisco. And then he was a guy that the Red Sox were asking for primarily in that Devers trade. But he came over to Boston and things did not exactly work out in the Red Sox favor when it came to Hicks. He struggled significantly out of the pen, primarily with his command. That was the area of his game that really held him back, was he could not throw strikes. I just remember distinctly one game against the Twins, and the game went into a rain delay, and it was going into the bottom of the ninth inning. The Red Sox were in Minnesota. They had just hit, and the Twins needed the opportunity to take their at-bats too. And I just remember there was a long rain delay, and then Jordan Hicks came into pitch when the rain delay finally stopped and had zero command. And obviously you can blame the weather and the delay for part of that, throwing off pitchers' routines. But this was a regular occurrence with him where he just could not find the strike zone. And I know the Red Sox are determined to try to fix that, but it's just a bad look that he was one of the biggest pieces that they got in that trade. And then there was prospect James Tibbs III, who was an outfielder, who was traded for Dustin May at the trade deadline in that trade. And that's kind of a bad look because of the fact that, for one, Dustin May was a rental. They were literally trading for a guy that they would have for half a season. And for two, Dustin May struggled with the Red Sox. That second half of the season with him in the rotation was rough. And having him be a guy who pitched every 5 days was rough. So that was tough to watch. And that's when I realized, all right, maybe the Red Sox should not be making trades with the Dodgers anymore, because clearly the Dodgers wanted to offload him for a reason. They got good Red Sox talent in return. So how the Red Sox benefited from that trade was very much not the same as how the Dodgers benefited from that trade. So that was an issue. So when you look at the overarching picture of what that Devers trade looked like, it is a pretty bad look for Boston. And I don't hate the idea of Devers going to San Francisco. His numbers were declining, and you could see that in his overarching stats. I did a deep dive into his overarching stats on Locked On Red Sox, so be sure to go back and find that if you haven't. But not only that, because he did decline in the second half of the season when he went to San Francisco, part of that could have been the struggle of moving to a new location. For sure, being on the West Coast, going from the East Coast could be a challenge too. But the writing was on the wall for him to start to decrease a little bit in terms of his productivity. Not only that, but also if everything was 100% true about him maybe being a bad teammate, being bad in the locker room, refusing to play a position that the Red Sox wanted to move him to, then yeah, I could see why the Red Sox front office wouldn't want to send that kind of message to the young talent on this team of, oh, it's okay to say no if you don't want to do it. Or it's okay to not be the best presence in the locker room, because the Red Sox have a young core on this team right now, and they're trying to set that certain tone. And if they didn't feel like Devers was really cooperating with the front office, then I could see that being a reason why they'd be like, all right, we can't have him here anymore. So that's a factor in the Red Sox 2025 trajectory of where they were at. And I mean, the San Francisco Giants went from being a playoff team to being a bottom of the barrel team in the second half after they got Devers. So it poses the question of, was the Red Sox front office onto something? The Red Sox went on to make the playoffs. So you look at all of that, and moving Devers himself wasn't the issue I had. The issue I had was moving Devers, not doing anything at the trade deadline to replace his offensive productivity, and the return being kind of weak, but because of San Francisco taking on the entirety of his remaining salary, that's why it weakened the return for Boston a little bit. So all of that being said, you move on from Rafael Devers, you make the playoffs, great. First round exit in the playoffs. Why? Primarily because the Red Sox could not hit with runners on base. And over again during that wild card series against the Yankees, I kept saying to myself, wow, wouldn't it be great if the Red Sox had a real offense and they had a guy who could come up in crunch time and hit the ball 500 feet? That guy could have been Rafael Devers. And if they had done something at the trade deadline to replace that bat, they could have been in a better spot. And I'm not taking away from the talent of the young players at all. Roman Anthony, star, going to be the face of the franchise for years to come. No doubt about it. Looking forward to his sophomore season on this Boston Red Sox team. Carlos Narvaez, a catcher who was on his rookie year this past season. Another guy who I'm expecting to hopefully continue to grow and elevate his game with the Red Sox going into 2026. No doubt about it. Then you have younger players like Cedar Rafaela, Wilyer Abreu, Jaron Duran. Are they all going to be here to start 2026? That's another question this offseason is, will one of them be traded? But you have these guys, these young players that showed a lot of improvement and growth during 2025. That's really exciting. And that was definitely a factor. And I really enjoyed seeing that in the playoffs. And I enjoyed seeing their pitching. It hurt the Red Sox that Lucas Giolito went down with an injury. That's just the reality at the end of the day. They could have used him to pitch game 3 of the wild card series. And I really like Connolly early. I'm glad he got some playoff exposure. He really did impress and pitched well in that playoff environment at Yankee Stadium on the road in a do or die elimination game. That's hard for anybody to do, not to mention a guy who had 4 major league starts under his belt at that point. So I like that he got that exposure, and I like the ceiling and potential there with Connolly early, no doubt about it. But having that veteran presence in Lucas Giolito, who also had pitched really well against the Yankees, would have been nice to have him in that game 3. But overall, there were things I liked that I saw, but the offense struggled really in the last month of the season. And even if you look beyond that, I would say more in the last 2 months of the season, the offense struggled to score. And that just kind of was what it was. And no matter how you slice it, that was a problem. So when you go and you think about all of that, you look at a team that never really replaced Rafael Devers' productivity. And now you look at Alex Bregman, who they had for a season, which, mind you, they signed him to a very team-friendly deal because it was 3 years with opt-outs after the first and second season. So that's all good that they were able to get Bregman. And I can't speak enough for how much of an impact Alex Bregman made on this team. The mentorship and leadership that he provided to the young players on this team is something that you won't really find with every player in Major League Baseball. The way he was able to guide these guys and the way they looked up to him truly helped elevate their game a lot. And that's something that'll definitely be missed by not having Bregman here anymore. It made sense for him to opt out of his contract. He's in his 30s now. This was his last opportunity for him to get that big contract. He agreed to it with the Cubs. So now the Red Sox no longer have him. And there are people saying, well, some leader he is. If he didn't want to be here, then whatever. But it's a lot more than that. It's not that he didn't want to be in Boston. It's that he wanted that career security. And when it came down to it at the end of the day, with him at his age, the Cubs were willing to give him a full no trade clause in his contract, and the Red Sox were not. It's as simple as that. So because of that, and because of the fact that the Red Sox did not give him the no trade clause, he said, all right, sorry, I'm going to the Cubs. He was like, I have 2 young kids. I don't want to have to move them all over the place anymore. Like, I want to go somewhere where I'm going to be stable and it's going to be a more permanent home. So that's exactly what Chicago was willing to promise him, and they did. Not to mention they also offered him $10 million more a year than the Red Sox did too. So overall, the Cubs deal made more sense for him. He'll be there for 5 years. Good for him. I'm happy for him. But now they're stuck without Devers or Bregman. So what exactly do they do? I'm going to continue to be discussing that coming up here, but just a reminder to continue to follow and subscribe to Locked On Red Sox and Boston Balling on any podcast platform. I am here Monday through Friday on Locked On Red Sox, discussing all things going on with the Boston Red Sox, and Monday through Thursday for Boston Balling, discussing all things going on with Boston sports. So be sure to subscribe to that as well and check that out on any podcast platform. I will be bringing in guests along the way that I'm very excited for you to hear what they have to say. So it should be a lot of fun. It should be a wild, fun ride bringing Boston Balling back, especially during a time where the Boston teams are playing really well right now, the teams that are in season. So be sure to continue to tune in. So I mentioned the Boston Red Sox and where they're at right now. No more Alex Bregman. No more Rafael Devers. They're expecting big things from Roman Anthony in 2026, but it's not fair to rely on Roman Anthony to be the sole big hitter in the lineup, especially because, again, he just finished his rookie season. So it's not necessarily fair to put that much pressure on a guy who's only going into his second season on a Major League Baseball field. So that is happening. They are putting a lot of pressure on Roman. They acquired Willson Contreras this offseason to help with the offense. I really do like that. I think he's going to be a guy who's going to be able to be a big contributor and is perhaps flying under the radar a little bit when you think about the Red Sox offense and who's going to contribute in what capacity. Willson Contreras has been one of the most consistent hitters in Major League Baseball over the last few seasons. And consistency is a big thing that the Red Sox go for when they're building their offense. They want guys who are not going to strike out a lot and are going to make good contact, because the Red Sox like to be able to have guys who can get on base. So Willson Contreras is somebody who can hopefully help provide that. But they do need another big bat. Trevor Story is a guy who intrigues me going into 2026, because while I am a fan of what I saw from Story in 2025, there's no guarantee that he's going to have a season like that again with the Red Sox. No guarantee. The season he had in 2025 was really good, and the biggest key to that was because he stayed healthy. Earlier on in his time with the Boston Red Sox, he faced so many injuries to the point where he missed a lot of games. He had said during the offseason last year, I want to prove to Red Sox Nation that they should be happy that I'm here. And he did just that. Those words played out on the field. He had a really good offensive season. He's one of the best defenders on the team, helped try to keep the Red Sox infield defense afloat. So nothing but good things for me to say about Trevor Story in 2025, but it's hard to gamble on him banking on repeating that in 2026. So because of that, we don't really know how Story's going to perform. So the Red Sox offense is really not in as good of a spot as I had hoped it would be right now. You have your outfielders. Wilyer Abreu, when healthy, was one of the Red Sox most consistent hitters in 2025. And then you have Cedar Rafaela, who does need work at the plate, but is a phenomenal defender. Jarren Duran took a decline offensively in 2025 compared to 2024. So we don't really know what this offense is going to look like. And the infield isn't really set right now. I am confident that the Red Sox are going to make another move for a bat, but the question is, who is it going to be? Because I'm looking at this Red Sox team right now, and I feel like this is a team who can compete, but isn't there yet at the same level as a team like Toronto. And I wanted to bring up the Blue Jays because the Blue Jays had a really good offseason. They added Dylan Cease on, in my personal opinion, an overpay, but what even is an overpay anymore? The market is so crazy right now for players that it's just getting ridiculous as it is. So what would Dylan Cease's market have looked like if he didn't sign that deal? Any team would have had to spend. Dylan Cease, if he's healthy, can definitely be a guy who could help boost the Blue Jays starting rotation. He won't be like a high-end starting pitcher for them, but he's a guy who could slot into their middle or back end of the rotation and be a really big boost. So that's going to help them a lot going into 2026. And keep in mind, this is a team that just went to the World Series. So their roster in itself was really good. And then they added Cease after going to the World Series. They lost Bo Bichette to the Mets. So that's something that I'd be interested in seeing, who replaces his productivity in the lineup. But the Blue Jays are a really good team. The Yankees also, the team that eliminated the Red Sox last year, they are a good team. And when they're healthy, they have a really good shot once again of going to the World Series. They just retained Cody Bellinger today, and they're pitching when healthy. I mean, Garrett Cole, if he's healthy, Max Fried as the number 2, Carlos Rodon, Luis Heel, Cam Schlittler. I mean, there's talented pitching on that team. So the Red Sox, in order for them to be able to keep up, are going to need to be able to hit. And they do say that pitching wins championships, which, fair. The Red Sox pitching staff, I would feel confident in going into a playoff series, no doubt about that. But what I feel really confident in the offense right now, not necessarily. So they are going to have to make another move to improve this infield. And part of that is going to entail acquiring a guy who doesn't strike out a lot, makes good contact, and can get on the bases. The Red Sox remind me a lot of the Seattle Mariners of the last few seasons, because the Mariners of the last few seasons had really strong pitching, arguably among the best in the American League, but they couldn't hit. So it was a lot of 2-1 games that they were winning because their pitchers were holding off opposing teams, but they just weren't able to score a lot. So with that combination, if the Red Sox go into this season and they're winning a lot of one-run games, now again, one-run games were an issue for the Red Sox in 2025. So those types of games could go either way. So going into 2026, what could that look like? Because they are in a spot where I don't feel confident in being able to score a lot of runs. So that all being said, hopefully those one-run games could go their way, because in hindsight, if you look back at the one-run games that didn't go their way in 2025, they could have won a lot more games. So you have to hope those work out in your favor, and you have to hope that guys continue to elevate at a really high level. With where the Red Sox are at right now, they are in a position to where they are hoping that their young players develop at a really high rate. And the problem is, if they don't all elevate to that level and they don't all pan out at exactly the level of competitiveness that you want them to, then where are you left? Then you're left with figuring out, okay, we have holes in the roster more so than I thought. So it's kind of a dangerous game to play, but there also is a lot of talent there. And I don't blame the Red Sox for wanting to at least take the chance, because they feel like they believe in their young guys. And I am all for doing that. Trust me. I'm all for taking a chance on your young players. But at the same time, you do have to mix those young players with veterans. Look at the Dodgers and their championship teams. They didn't do all of that with just young talent from their system. They banked on their farm system, which, by the way, they have the top farm system in baseball right now, which is something we all needed to hear after their super team has gotten better this offseason. They have a lot of good young talent, and they develop those guys, and they do a good job of developing those guys, but they also go and bring in veteran talent to pair with them, like the Mookie Bettses of the world, the Freddie Freemans of the world. You want those types of players, those veterans who have experience, to be on the team to pair with the young guys. So if you look at that Dodgers team right now, this Red Sox offense is not where the Dodgers offense is. And that is my biggest concern for them right now going into 2026, is what can they do to fix that offense? Bring in an infielder who plays a sound defense and can hit. Nico Hoerner from the Cubs is an intriguing option. Really good defensive second baseman. The Red Sox, I'm sure, are eyeing him. Isaac Paredes, I know they're interested in him. Third baseman from the Astros. Is he going to be the guy that steps in? And I've done a deep dive analysis, again, on Locked On Red Sox on all these guys and whether they'd be a fit for the Red Sox. Make sure, again, that you're tuning into that show for my more nitty-gritty deep dive Red Sox analysis. But what I can sit here and say is that this team has the ability to be really, really good. It just feels like they're one offensive piece away from truly getting over that hump to get to that next level. I know that there's a lot of talent on this team, and that's another thing to keep in mind too about this Red Sox team is they're hopefully only going to continue to elevate because now the young talent has had exposure to the postseason. A lot of those rookies, now that they have a year under their belt, can hopefully play with a little bit more confidence going into 2026. So, yes, you'll hopefully hit on a lot of that young core continuing to develop. But if they can get a sound second or third baseman to add to that, all of a sudden we're looking like a team that is legitimate, that could make a deep run. Because the goal for the Red Sox should not be we just want to make the playoffs. And making the playoffs in 2025 was great because this was a team that had missed the playoffs the last few seasons before that, since 2021. And the front office had said we want to make the playoffs, and they did. Now it should be capitalizing on that. Now the goal should be, okay, how can we take this up a notch and go even deeper into the playoffs than we did in 2025? So that's a big thing that I'm looking at going into the 2026 season is truly how deep of a run can this Red Sox team go. And when I'm looking at the other teams in the AL, it's going to be the offense that's going to hold the Red Sox back right now from making a deep run. And by the way, we can talk about John Henry, and I've talked about him extensively on this show. Is it a problem still that he doesn't want to spend money? Yes. I mean, this is a big market baseball team that doesn't want to spend. And a lot of people wanted Bo Bichette, who I mentioned before, went to the Mets. I did too. I was really interested in him as a potential name for Boston. But after the Red Sox brought in Ranger Suarez, this was before Bo Bichette made his decision, I felt like the Red Sox were done spending. I was like, they're not going to pay another big free agent. So say goodbye to Bo Bichette. And sure enough, Bo Bichette is not in Boston. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I would have liked Bichette. Is he an over-the-top game-changing type of player? No, but I think his bat could have fit nicely at Fenway. I think Isaac Paredes' bat could fit even nicer at Fenway. So they definitely do need to make a move. What that move will be is still yet to be determined, but hopefully we're going into another Red Sox conversation soon where we're talking about what the Red Sox did and where they stack up to the rest of the AL East, because it's truly hard to gauge where they would stack up to the AL East without the roster being complete. But say worst case scenario, the roster is complete right now. Say this is what the roster looks like. No more changes. They're not better than Toronto. They're probably not better than the Yankees, at least from an offensive standpoint. I would say maybe the starting rotation gets a little bit of an edge, but when the Yankees starting rotation is healthy, they're pretty freaking good. The Orioles are a wild card. They had a down year in 2025, but people forget they won 100 games just a couple of years ago and were a playoff team. The talent on that team still very much exists. I believe that the Orioles are going to have a bounce back season in 2026. They also added Pete Alonso to boost their lineup. So I feel like the Orioles are going to be a team that's going to be a threat. I would say the only team that the Red Sox are definitively better than right now in the AL East, and that's assuming they don't make any more moves, is the Tampa Bay Rays. And that's only because the Rays didn't do a whole lot this offseason, which is pretty typical. They kind of fly under the radar, and then these random players emerge as superstars with Tampa Bay. So I would put them as fourth in the division right now. Again, that could be third, depending on how the Orioles look going into 2026. But if the Red Sox don't add an offensive piece, I would not be able to put them confidently ahead of the Blue Jays or the Yankees going into this upcoming season. So add an offensive player, an infielder in particular, is no doubt going to have to be the priority for the Red Sox front office for the remainder of this offseason. We'll have to see who that's going to be. But overall, I'm excited. I'm excited for baseball to come back. I'll be down at spring training at the end of February. So if you're going to be there, please be sure to let me know. I'll definitely say hi. And I'm looking forward to seeing some of these young players, how they developed during the offseason. Another player that I didn't mention that is going to be a big factor in all this in 2026 is Masataka Yoshida. We haven't really seen consistently a dominant version of him at the plate. And that's definitely disappointing for the Red Sox because they were hoping when they brought him in that they would get more from him. He's a defensive liability, just doesn't play defense very well. So his primary role now has kind of become more of a full-time DH. And he hasn't been consistent enough offensively to be able to be fully effective in that position confidently. But he has bulked up this offseason and he has put in the work. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him in 2026 because if we have a good season from Masa, that is a huge boost to the offense. And I know Craig Breslow and Alex Cora are really confident in him and believe in his ability to be a big piece of the puzzle in 2026. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to seeing how he is able to step up going into this upcoming season. But overall, the version of him that we saw in the last month plus of 2025, if that's any indication of how he'll look in 2026, then we do have a reason to be super excited. So looking forward to seeing how things go, but thanks for tuning in. Make sure that you continue to subscribe to Boston Balling on any podcast platform if you want to hear me discuss everything going on with Boston sports. Take care and I'll catch you next time.